Welcome, folks. We're happy that you are here. We're going to get started in just a minute or two, and you'll get to meet these fabulous women. And we've got some really fascinating discussions happening today. This is going to be exciting. So, you have found the right place. You're not crazy. What corporate women or what women need to know about corporate America, about promotions, about politics, about power. We've got a lot of different points of view on here, and I think you're going to take away some really good tips. All right. We're going to give just one more minute. Welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody. I'm going to share just a little bit. We're not going to actually start with slides, but I want you to see as you're coming in who these fabulous panelists are and the points of view about what we're going to be discussing today. By the way, this was all Victoria's idea. So Victoria gets to start us off today, and we'll give everybody just a minute to come in. But I'd love to hear you in chat, if you would. Open up your chat and tell us, where are you and how did you learn about this? How did you learn about this program? Are you a Girls Club graduate? Are you a friend of Victoria's? Have you read everything that Anna's ever written? Uh, tell us more in the chat, and we'll get started in just one minute. Oh, wonderful. Hi, Lindsay. And mentor, don't forget. Love it that you're back and contributing. So cool. I wonder if we're going to have anybody from your cohort here, Victoria. Love it. Another grad. Boom. Rhonda in Iowa. Love that. I'm from Iowa too. I heard you had some horrible tornadoes yesterday. I hope everybody was safe. And Becca and Jennifer. Wonderful. Working with Girls Club. Favor, hi. Okay, well, this is great. All right, well, we'll have some people trickling in along the way, but what I'd like to do is turn this over to the brave and fabulous originator of this entire discussion. Victoria, let's kick us off. How did we get here today and why? And tell us a little more about your story.
The whole reason I'm Victoria Brooks, by the way, and the whole reason that I wanted to get Lauren Bailey and Dr. Anna Cole Schmidt together was because when I first started out in my career, I'm a first generation college graduate. My mother came here believing in the American dream as an immigrant. I became a teen mom and I was determined to find a way out of poverty. I wanted to go into tech. And it actually took me 4 job moves since I didn't have any sort of network built in before I was able to break into tech. And when I broke into tech, it was as an administrative assistant, a pink collar job, which given the fact that I had studied computer programming all or computer classes, I won't say programming, but computer classes I have throughout my career coming in as an administrative assistant was a little bit of a slap in the face to me. Now, when I when I wanted to go into leadership, I was told that my options as a single mom was limited. I wouldn't be competitive. Leadership is not a 9 to 5 job. So I didn't really pursue it as hard until my daughter moved out. The advice I did get was very vague on how to climb the ladder. And it came from men whose experience was nothing like mine. They would say, be undeniable and get picked. And if you've seen any of the reporting out there, getting picked is not something that necessarily happens to women. Heck, if you look in your company, chances are you're going to see that getting picked is not really something that happens for women. So I found tools like Girls Club. I forgot what cohort number I was, but I have gone through the program. I am a member of the Unwritten Rules school that Dr. Anna Call Schmidt has. And I knew that I felt compelled, I should say, to share them. I'm not getting paid by either of these women. I just wanted to make sure that people knew about this because it was so important because I know so many highly qualified women who are doing all of the right things and they get overlooked anyway.
Mhm.
So why should you listen to these two? Let, let's go ahead and let them tell you. Lauren, will you start us off?
Yeah, I love it. This is so fun that I don't have to be the facilitator and you're running things here today. But I feel a little intimidated because Dr. Anna, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back and forth. Dr. K has just so much tremendous research. And I'm going to share what I've learned myself coming up as a woman, but also through 8 years now of running the Girls Club program. And I will tell you from meeting each other early on, I've got some alternate points of view and so it's going to be a fascinating discussion. And so I think we're going to not always agree. So let me do what you asked me to do. My name's Lauren Bailey, and I founded 3 companies. Factor 8 does sales training and manager training, and Girls Club was born out of the manager training at Factor 8 when I was training all these men around the world and then watching the women not apply for those jobs. And I was like, if only they knew how crappy these guys really are at their jobs, then they would not feel, And so that was sort of the birth of Girls Club, which is a 5-month cohort where we are fixing the broken rung. Like individual contributors rapidly getting promoted up into management. That's our goal. And this program combines sales management and training skills along with mentorship and a community and a lot of ambitious, fabulous women like Victoria and the folks that are here watching us tonight. So that's my lens and perspective on this. Dr. K, can I hand it to you?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, which is the type of psychology nobody knows about. Basically, I study human behavior at work, how it impacts people and organizations. And in my first class that I ever took in grad school, they told us there are 2 types of job performance, task performance, contextual performance. Task performance is what's written in your job description, and contextual performance was all that other stuff. And I was like, the only person who's like, cool, what's all that other stuff? And everybody looked at me like I was insane. And nobody could really answer that question for me. But then after class, everybody else was like, yeah, I don't know what all that other stuff is either. And I was like, cool, so you're all cowards. But now I'm going to do a whole dissertation on this. And I did. And I
On my
kept
lane.
researching it afterwards. Um, and so I am not an academic. I do enjoy research. I do have a PhD, but I've worked in everything from local government to federal government in the states, um, community college to Ivy League, and small woman-owned business to Big Four firm, and just repeatedly across projects, across issues and organizations that we were troubleshooting. I've just seen organizations and people continue to hit this invisible wall of what you're saying isn't being interpreted the way you think it is, and things you're asking people to do aren't as clear because of these I call them class culture codes, and they intersect with gender and race and neurodivergence. And that's what I do is I make those transparent. So now I full time coach people on how to navigate these rules, and I continue to research, and I can have communications with leaders and train leaders on not just the impact on people, but also on their business, because a lot of these having really underqualified men in power isn't good for business. Who could have guessed that? You know? So, yeah, that's
I
what I do.
love it how you say it like you see it.
I am from North Florida, by the way. I see a lot of Floridians in the chat. So, hello. I call it Floribama. Not Central Florida. Everybody's from Central Florida, but good to see everybody.
Love it. All right,
Well,
so that's who's here today. Victoria, where are we going?
I'd like to start off talking about the broken rung, which was already mentioned.
Mhm.
The broken rung at entry-level leadership has been documented for 11 years by the Women in Workplace report, and it still isn't fixed. Um,
Yeah.
Furthermore, in the 2025 report, it has been said that leaders, companies investing in women's leadership has actually dropped down to about 50% from, I believe it was 90%. So why hasn't it been fixed? What are the structural issues? And what can women do to help themselves as the powers that be are pulling back? Lauren, would you start off?
Yeah, I mean, that's deep. Let's unpack this sucker. That's amazing. I will tell you anecdotally that yes, I've seen a difference. We almost shut our doors at Girls Club this year because, right, we used to get lots of sponsors and companies being involved, and it became very uncool to invest in DEI, and we lost sponsors and participants and companies. So I put it closed Girls Club actually and put it up underneath my first company, Factor 8, to save it. So yeah, it's and not the time for that. Everything has to be equal opportunity. In fact, you'll see that I'm announcing a emerging leaders certification program, which is Girls Club co-ed because it has to be equal. And I was discriminating against men. So that is launching. It's gonna be fun. It really will be, right? Everybody deserves a chance to level up their careers. All right, so why does the broken rung exist? I will tell a story because I know that Dr. K is going to give you research. When I was the only female sales manager in tech, working with about 20 men, the VP there, Rob, was the bane of my existence. And I hated going into work every day. And I eventually left and got a different job and started a different career, and everything was fine. Flash forward 10 years, Rob Wood gave me the first $1,000 donation to support Girls Club, right? He'd had daughters in the meantime. And one of the things I did besides take his money was invite him into cohort one in a fireside chat called the Unintentional Boys Club. And I said, Rob, you made my life hell. You created the biggest boys club I've ever seen in my entire life. Why? And he answered honestly. And then, by the way, we all asked questions like, do you talk about us when we're not there? Do you treat us differently? It was a really honest discussion. And I thank him for that. He grew up and owned up and evolved and all the wonderful things. And I think that's possible. So, anyway, Boys Club and Kylie, yep, finance for sure. Here's what he said. He said, when I got this job and I needed to grow the department by 100 people in under 100 days, I used my network like we all would. And so I called everybody I'd worked with before and I called everybody I knew. And guess what? 98% of them were men. So the reason this is happening is history, right? We weren't in the workforce. We don't have the majority there. And people hire who they trust. And it is a psychological fact, back me up, Dr. K, that we trust people that look like us. So I don't think a lot of people go into work saying, I'm going to do some good quality discrimination today. But I think that it happens all the time. And so how do we fix it was the last part of your question. A lot of education, right? And helping Rob purposely go and find more women. But I think it's also a lot of education on our side because guys tell me every day now, having carried the girls' club flag, I don't get enough female applicants. I'm dying to get some women in here. Could you please help me? Right? Where are all the women? I need more women to apply. So I coach them on how to change up their job descriptions and how to attract different types of people, right? That's part of what the issue is. So my small sliver of fixing this is helping activate the women to take the risk. Because when she's already there in finance, Kylie, let's say, right, surrounded by men, she's nervous about raising her hand and putting her hat in the ring for the promotion. Now, I'm not saying that if she did it, she'll automatically get it, but I'm saying we're never going to get it if we don't try. And so, Girls Club is about building the skills and the confidence to help more women take those risks and raise their hands to go for the promotions and negotiate the salary while she's getting it so that we also stop this wage gap nonsense. So, it exists because of history. It exists because we don't advocate for ourselves and take the risks as often as the white men do for a million different reasons. And I think we fix it through time, education of the white men and of the women who can take the risks. Dr. K, blow me out with some research. Why does it really exist?
I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, there isn't a blanket statement that I hope to make, but I like that you bring up history because, as I said in the post, I advertise this and I say at least twice in my book. American organizations and many organizations around the world, though, for different demographics, were forced to open their doors to women and people from underrepresented racial groups and even people with disabilities. And how it has kept the power of the people who initially didn't want to open those doors is in the unwritten rules. And some of that's intentional. If there wasn't some intentional, we wouldn't be going through what we're going through right now with all the DEI funding being pulled. But some of it, a lot of it, is just that it is very hard to see your own culture as a culture. And so when you're in a group that has any amount of privilege, you just think it's the way things are.
Okay.
And so when people bring up things to you that you're like, hey, so you just kept talking over me. You're like, what are you talking about? Because you're just used to, I give the example of as a white woman in America, I don't walk into a store and nobody follows me around assuming I'm stealing and think, wow, I have so much privilege. I just don't think about it because that's my normal. Now I have a choice when someone else tells me, hey, I'm a Black or Latino man, and somebody follows me around the store assuming I'm stealing, even though I'm a lawyer. I have the choice to then say, no, that sounds like bullshit, or to say, huh, I never thought of it, right? I wonder what, as an IO psychologist, what I could do to train those employees about the stereotyping they're doing, right? And how is that impacting the business to then have that reputation? So it's a combination of history and that it is very hard for us to see things that we just see as normal. And we've
Mhm.
had what has been defined as normal in most organizations. People always push back at me on, yes, but shouldn't the majority of the organization define what the norms are? And I would make the argument that it's a very small group of people, that it's actually a very small minority whose norms are generalized. It is usually very wealthy, able-bodied white men, at least in the US. Somewhere else in the world, that might look like a different demographic, whoever's in charge. And so most people, I mean, I've talked to autistic white men who have a hard time in it. I've talked to disabled white men. I've talked to the variety, but the extent to which it impacts is that as you are have more physical challenges, as you are a woman of color, that it gets more and more difficult because the water you're swimming in was not made for you, and that has not changed. So how I believe we change it, um, is I agree with Lauren about education. We have to be able to have the conversation first. That's usually one of the first things people say to me when they encounter my work is, you're giving me the language to something I felt but didn't know how to talk about. Now I can talk about it. Of measuring the impact, because I am a big believer on that things aren't always going well. We're kind of in a leadership crisis in a lot of places. What can we do to make things better? And that's the scientist in me. I'm like, okay, if this isn't working, if command and control leadership isn't working here, maybe we need to lean more into transformational leadership, right? Which a lot of women are better at. Just saying. Um, and what do we do to rebuild culturally these unwritten rules of what healthy leadership looks like? And I do believe if we focus on healthy cultures and competence, that it would naturally diversify our leadership because there's not one group that has a chokehold on competence and relationship building.
And so do we not focus on competence now?
Oh no,
Say more.
the boys' club is not built on competence.
I'm
I mean,
so sorry, but the face at the same time was
how
that
well you can
so
swing a
classic?
golf ball does not tell me how you can run a business. It does not tell me you know how to hire based on skill. Um, a lot of it, there's a lot of nepotism. And as you said, confirmation bias, similarity bias. I think white women from Florida are wonderful. The first thing I noticed when I got on the chat was like, oh, they're from Florida, right? Like that's because, there's an appeal, right? And I
Yeah.
think Victoria related to my work because we have a similar background, not the same, but like, okay, there's some appeal to something, right? And that connection isn't bad. But as a work psychologist, it's my responsibility to set up systems in place that I make sure that we're not just doing the lunch test, that you do like this person, okay, but also can they do the job? And there are some jobs where that's more dangerous than others. Like I want a surgeon who knows how to do their surgery, right? I don't care. They can actually be a jerk, and I'm okay with it mostly, right? I want them to know how to fix my heart. But it's always expensive to have someone who doesn't know how to do their job, but they're the life of the party, or they're really great on the golf course,
Or I just liked them.
or I
And we
just
both
liked them.
graduated from the same
Right.
it's in North Florida, and so they got the job.
We both went to North Florida Community College, and now we're besties. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
What are the, Dr. K, I'd like to address, you had talked about white normative rules. Can you give us a couple of examples of the rules that keep women stuck? And then Lauren, if you could go after that and share your thoughts.
Do you mean my unwritten rules that I talk
Yes.
about, and then for women specifically? So the ones I see strongest for women are navigating being assertive but not too aggressive, the shift to individualism instead of community, because women across the world, there are variations in how much men are expected to be community based. There are other places, like I just got back from Asia, men are expected to be more collectivistic, to think more of people than like American men. But women, pretty universally, are expected to care about everyone else and not themselves. I won't say 100%, but it's pretty high. But corporate rewards individualism, no matter what they say about teamwork on the job description or on their website. And so that's a conflict. And then there's that when you perform the same behaviors that would be rewarded with a higher up white man of being assertive or stating your opinion or disagreeing is often perceived as aggressive, especially if you're a woman of color. So those are two really big ones. Um, in general, because there are a lot that are about navigating politics and building relationships and such, it's also not talked about enough that women navigate that. Lauren, I wonder if you have a lot to say about this. Especially attractive women have a lot to navigate. Where are you're networking? Most of the people have power are men, and you have to keep that fine line of building the relationship or if they think you like them.
Mhm.
And that's not something that a lot of men at least acknowledge openly. And so
Mhm.
that can make the other things like the unwritten rule of schmoozing that you're supposed to flatter and ingratiate, um, navigating the hierarchy, even building those relationships, maintaining those relationships. I mean, I know I've gotten LinkedIn messages before when I was in my 20s, and I was like, oh, they're inviting me to this networking event, but I've never met this guy before. Is it even safe for me to go? Is this a setup? And I
Mhm.
didn't go for 2 years. I connected with him, but I pushed it off for 2 years until I saw enough people talking about it and he hadn't been aggressive enough that then I went. And it's like, but how long? What did it cost me in 2 years of not having those relationships?
Mhm.
So I could talk forever, but I'll pause there and I'm sure Lauren has a lot of good stuff to say.
Got it. Well, I love the idea of the unwritten rules. So assertiveness is the double bind, and it's fascinating when you read the research on this, right? So when a woman speaks up in a meeting and shows assertive tendencies, right? Then, ooh, she's a bitch. However, if she speaks up and shows the community mother hen team, right? Then she's too soft. So it kind of doesn't matter if she speaks up and is brilliant or not. She's getting misthought of, if you will, either way. And that is bullshit. And it deep within cultures. There's another study showing that when women speak, both men and women interrupt women more. And that makes me pause every once in a while because I'm a horrible interrupter. And I am pretty equal opportunity interrupter. And I think, wow, is that like I had no idea that I was putting women down as I was doing that. All right. So I want to talk about the relationships and sex. You're exactly right. Every year in Girls Club, where we have 30 to 50 women live on a Zoom, we ask the question, right? Raise your hand if you've been hit on at a work event or negotiated some sort of inappropriate behavior. And I just want you to guess what you think Yeah, exactly. Hands are going up. What do you go ahead, everybody. Do it. And I want you to guess what's the percentage? 100% is your guess. And you're exactly right. Every single hand goes up every single time. And that's like, how many years of history is it going to take for men to understand that that gosh, right? Sex is not appropriate everywhere. And maybe it's not fair, right? There's probably cringy women doing the same thing in power, but you don't hear about that as often, do you? So I think that can be hard to navigate. It can also be equally hard to navigate at the party, right? So let's say it's not a late night happy hour where somebody's getting inappropriate and hitting on you. Let's just talk about the party itself, early doors, early dime, right? At the party. Half of the time, the women are the wives. And I don't want to hang out with the wives and talk about the kids. I want to talk about business over here with the guys. But now I'm worried about what all those women think of me because I got to tell you, women do it too, right? Who does she think she is over there with all of those men? And the rumors, raise your hand on this one too, ladies. Has anybody been accused of sleeping their way to the top? Boom, there's a hand. Um, those rumors were not started in my company by men. It was the women who accused me of sleeping with every single boss at the company because I was the only boss, right? That's bullshit. I don't know how we stop that either, but it's been going on for too long. What are your thoughts? How do we stop that? Not yet. Good, Lindsay. I'm glad. I don't think I brought a lot of answers there, did I? I agree with every one of your unwritten rules, and we do have to navigate it. And sadly, some of the answers are, they feel like cop-outs. I'll tell you that my answer is don't be the last one at the happy hour. Avoid the goddamn situation. You shouldn't have to. It shouldn't be that way, but it's the smart thing to do to avoid the situation and avoid the rumors afterwards. Um, which is a bummer. When it comes to the assertiveness and the speaking up, I say wear the bitch badge with honor. Speak up, be assertive. The first time I was called a bitch at work in my 20s, I cried and I thought, that's horrible. People don't like me. It didn't hold me back. I moved up that ladder. I got jobs, I got promotions, I got respect, and I got results. And I did it by wearing my bitch badge with honor. You don't have to all like me. That's okay. You just have to respect me. And so now we celebrate that every year in Girls Club. And I'm sorry that that's what the name is. Let's kind of rebrand it.
But that is a tool, that's a power tool that a lot of men use is it's called diagonalism. Taking a tool, a word, and making it mean something else. And it's very powerful because then it robs them of the language to use it against you. And it's abused, right? Once I say that y'all are going to see it like on the news and everywhere. It's abused. When a word starts the meaning change, they're doing that intentionally. And so I think it's actually very clever to call it the bitch badge because then when somebody calls you a bitch, you're like the biggest one you'll meet. Hello. Thank you, right? And it then you're not giving them the reaction that YouTube red pill content told them that they'd get from you.
Mm.
And I do think as much as it sucks what's going on right now with it, like this is not a conversation we're having, like you said, funding's getting pulled. It is happening because I think women are having enough. We've had enough. We are rebranding the bitch badge. We are fewer are getting married, fewer are having children, fewer when they do have children are quitting their jobs or they're coming back real quick or we're starting their own business and they're freaking out. They wouldn't have to do this if we weren't elevating. I mean, okay, I'll do mine. How many people have heard people say women are leaving men behind in like the past year? It's everywhere, right? And
Yeah,
it's like
what's that?
we didn't do anything to them actually, and most people still in charge or still look the same, right? But it's that once we have we have just started moving forward without as heavy of a chain on us, and so they're freaking out. And I do love to see their panic.
How do you
So
see it? How do you see panic and freaking out at this macro level? Right, you get to see so many different organizations. Are you seeing it in individual examples, or are you talking about what you're seeing on the?
I see it in individual. I mean, they definitely find my social pages, that's for sure. And I'm that's the last thing I see before I block them. Um, I see it in these social responses and in the push about merit. See, that's a word that they've changed the meaning. So I talk about this in my book. They've tried to change the meaning of, and this goes back to the history of why, with everything going on, do we only have white men in power? There's really two options. There's either that the systems were made by and for them, and they were forced to open up, but we didn't just redistribute that demographically. So we've had the same similarity bias picking people for the past 100 years, even as the systems have changed 50 to 100 years. And so we still have a similar problem. But the other narrative of that, and why people get so upset when you say this, is that if you don't know that that's true, then your assumption is that the only people qualified to do this work is white men. That's what the alternative belief is that it's either these were cultural norm systems that are built that we have to address to improve, or the only people qualified are white men. And that's what merit has been turned to mean, is that anybody who is not a white man is a DEI hire and did not get there based on merit. And that's
Mm,
just not true. There is no
triangulate.
merit. There is no merit of golf course. There is no merit of drinking at happy hour, right? So, yeah. There's no merit behind not doing half the household responsibilities so that she can focus on work. I mean, there's things like that.
Ooh, that was good. Ooh, that was good. And you say it's called triangulating when you take a word and you make it.
Diagonalism. So it's like the opposite.
Thank you.
It's the
Diagonalism.
diagonal.
What's another example of that?
Uh, I'm trying to think of something that's not politically charged. I think they did that with DEI. Did it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a millennial. Even when I was growing up in a very conservative family, rural North Florida Bible Belt, civil rights was not talked about negatively. It was
Hmm.
seen as positive. DEI wasn't really a bad word until it started being used as people didn't get hired fairly. That's not what it means.
Interesting.
But what that word represents is woke, the word work, woke. It's African American vernacular. It means becoming aware of a systemic problem. Now it's been used to mean like essentially leftist, right? It's become a political identity.
Mm,
It changed. So now the conversations are harder to have because you're not talking about the same definitions.
hmm. Well, I really enjoyed learning that. Thank you for sharing that. Victoria, where do we go next?
I was just going to chime in with, even as an individual contributor, I find a lot of times people have, or men in particular, but people in general, have pushed boundaries and made audacious requests that I don't think that they would have normally asked other men. And then when I push back and set boundaries, it comes back to the bitch badge. So I've had to learn very quickly that if I didn't set boundaries and own the bitch badge, that I would soon get taken advantage of and exploited in corporate America.
I
Um,
want to talk to that for a second for sure, because I hear an example of that every single year, right? Victoria, you are doing really great work. I've got this extra project and I need you to own it. I need you to take on, Bob's team while he's out. Or, right, Anna's on maternity leave. I need you to manage her team too while she's out. So doing a good job of being asked to be a team player. And you're saying you got to a point of saying, if you're not going to pay me extra and I'm not going to earn a promotion on the other side of this, you can take your work and stick it, right?
yeah, actually, as a top performing salesperson, what ends up happening is a lot of people want you to close their deals, even if you don't get paid on it.
Mm,
And, I only have 24 hours in a day. So I have to say, no, I don't get paid on that. I only have 24 hours in a day. I need to focus my time where I get paid. And, isn't that fair? And kind of pulling it back to, because otherwise they'll say, oh, just help this person out. It's closing deals is not a one-shot deal. It's, typically a relationship building over a long period of time, building
Hmm.
that core trust. So no, absolutely not. I will, and when I do push back, and I've had it go up to the VP level where they said, well, Victoria is not being a team player, and have my managers get and directors get upset because they don't want that kind of visibility. And then the VP goes, "Oh, you know what? No, that's completely fair because if we're not getting paid on it, if we're not a part of the deal, we shouldn't be involved in it." And but just because they didn't want to have their tall poppy coming out with negative reputations. It really, there was a lot of pushback on me. And I was like, no, because if I allow this to slide, then it just keeps coming. It really does.
I'm
But
interested in your opinion on that, Dr. K, because there's two sides to this street, right? If you were trying to get promoted to manager and being asked to mentor other reps, that is a way that you are showing your ability on the job. And I would say lean into that. It doesn't mean closing the deals for them. But you're being asked to mentor and coach. And that's what the management job is. Now, it's the same. I can see the side of, hey, here's a stretch assignment. You want to get promoted in X, Y, and Z role, and I've got a stretch assignment for you. I'm going to delegate some things to you, and let's see how you do at this next level. And it's a chance to prove and try on. But when does it go too far? So, Dr. K, that's the question, right? One side of the coin
Yeah.
is I'm trying on the job. The other side of the coin is I'm not being paid to do that and I'm being taken advantage of.
Yeah. I relate to Victoria's story a lot. I have been somewhere that I worked 4 jobs with no
Yep,
additional pay.
yep.
And it confused people when on my resume afterwards, they were like, wait, which job was this? I was like, I was doing all of them.
Mhm,
It was a lot because I was going to make sure I got credit for it. Um,
mhm.
because that it has never worked for me to take additional labor on and get promoted because what that always signaled to them, I think what they always saw and I didn't see was they realized how much they could get out of me for free and I'd be very expensive to replace at that level because they had to hire 4 people to replace me when I left. Right? Which is why when I work with leaders, I've talked to them about there's stretch assignments and then you're going to be losing money and it's really hard to measure the knowledge transfer loss as well of when you burn out a top performer, they will go find another job. They're a top performer, right?
Yep.
Um, I after that whole scenario, I had a mentor who told me there are things to ask for, and this is maybe part of the bitch badge as well, is asking what the period of time it's expected. Like, is there an end date? Is this like a trial that I can show you I have the skills, or is this just undisclosed additional labor forever? That's different, right?
Mhm.
Is it an audition or is it abuse? And then there's also some places will show you and you can ask for if it's going to be really long term or like if somebody's out on parental leave or something, you can ask for an interim title. And that way you at least can authentically put on your resume and your LinkedIn, you were the interim director, and that signals to people that you have the ability, right? There's just something that happened like somebody went on maternity leave, right? It's not that you failed. And then you at least get the recognition. So I learned more things about how to negotiate that besides yes, I'll just do everything you want, which especially women from more low income backgrounds do because you're more desperate for the money. You're afraid you're going to get fired. And there is a very strong pride among the working class in that I may not be in charge, but nobody has my work ethic. It's like how you like
Yeah.
signify virtue and value and
Yeah.
identity. And that gets exploited in corporate.
So the difference between an audition and abuse is
Hmm.
time. And
I think
so
that's a pretty big one.
it's huge. Yeah. So we tackled this once in a girls' club webinar a few years ago. And I was asking this question to women and men, both. And I loved the answer I got from Mark, who is now not just the interim, but the VP of sales. And this is what happened, right? Their VP left. He was a director. He was asked to help interview the new VPs coming in. Does that sound familiar, ladies? Okay. We do that all the time, hire our boss, and then we're so pissed that we are not the ones who got the job that we leave. But guess what
Hmm.
never happened? We never said, I'd like that job instead. Put me on the list to be interviewed. Well, Mark did. Okay. And he went to the president and said, listen, I have an idea. Yeah, I'll step in and help, but I need you to consider me for the job, right? You want me on the hiring committee. You want me to fill in. I feel like I should be a natural choice for this promotion, but I get it. You haven't seen me in this role and I don't have experience. So here's what we're going to do, right? I will do this job for 90 days with the interim title. You'll interview me against the other candidates. And in 90 days, if we decide I'm keeping the job or if we have to extend the period of time, then we'll meet and talk about the compensation that's fair for this role. So he time bound his audition and he turned
Yeah.
it into an audition by having a time frame, pre-scheduling the conversation, setting the expectation that we would have a comp change, and throwing his hat in the ring officially. And it's a
Yeah.
very fair, perfect conversation to have. And by the way, he got the job and the raise
Hmm.
and the title.
Hmm.
And I think that's what we do. It's okay. So, how would you ask? Does anybody else have advice on that? Right. So, I did the same, Dr. K. I had two full-time jobs and they burnt out the high performer and I left. Um, when somebody says, hey, Victoria, we'd like you to take on X, Y, and Z, how are we supposed to say it in a way that is fair and full of boundaries?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking
I
all
guess
of
you are.
I
Um,
am. Yeah, Victoria, take a crack at this.
I will say what I've said in the past is, I have XYZ in terms of my priorities. Um, how are we going to redo our priorities? I've also had people say, um, well, no, that's an additional thing that we're going to put on you. And then we've had to negotiate in terms of we've had to negotiate what can be delegated. For one, I tend to be a control freak, particularly when it comes to my compensation. So anything with regards to closing deals, I'm terrible at delegating because I feel like I am the only one who can who can close these deals. But I'm willing to outsource other things. The thing that comes up with outsourcing other tasks, I find, is that the more I outsource, the more I have to follow up with other people, which is great if the other people are on top of it. Working in corporate, that hasn't always been my experience, particularly if they haven't negotiated good boundaries and they're taking on everything. So I find a lot of it is trial and error, at least the way I've been doing it, up until hearing about Lauren Bailey's story about Mark. Now I have a good idea as to how to go about doing this because I've done it where I was basically the manager when my manager wasn't around. No title change, no nothing. And then when it came time to get promoted, I was passed over because the director didn't feel that I had enough executive presence. So that hurt because I didn't have a time bound, I thought I was auditioning for the role. And
Mhm.
then it felt like going through the actual interview and applying pressure, it felt like this wasn't time bound. Like they didn't see me advancing. And I think that's that kind of goes to the red environment, green environment. Like what are the green flags that you are being advanced
Mhm.
versus what are the um versus why you're being exploited. And I think that you all answered that in terms of time bound and whether it's abuse or whether how do you set expectations?
Yeah. But I think that not everybody thinks about it that way either, right? I think that even if someone comes to you with work without a time or a title, it's on us to ask for it.
Agreed, 100%. Any promotion I've ever received has been a result of me asking, pushing,
Yeah.
asking what else needs to happen, what next,
Hmm.
getting feedback, applying pressure, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Um, and that wasn't the the advice I got early on was be undeniable and you'll get picked. And that's not ever been my experience as a woman of color, first generation college graduate in corporate America. It's always been I had to be very, very intentional about building my career.
Hmm. So you
And,
wanted to ask about red flags and green flags. Do you want to go there next?
you know, um, actually, let's go with, yeah, let's go with that and then come back to the highest leverage actions that people can take.
I think we'll have time for just about two more. Yeah. All right. So we've talked about a couple red flags. I'm getting buried with work, but not getting the opportunity for the time bound or the interim title. I would say I'm going to add one or two more. The next red flag I'm going to say is nebulous feedback without a plan. Reading our comments here, executive presence, quote unquote. Okay, great. Help me fix that. Give me an example of what good looks like. Get me a mentor, a course, a book, give me more specifics. So when you can't get those specifics in a development plan to fill it in, then it feels a little bit more like a red flag brush off. Um, the other red flag is when you ask for development and a path, it not being given to you. Not every company will proactively give you that. You have to raise your hand and say, I'm interested in moving up someday. Would you work with me on that? I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking for a sponsor. I'm looking for a plan. I'm looking for feedback. Would you partner with me on that? If you're getting no's, you're getting blown off. Big red flag. Dr. K.
I'm going to be the neurodivergent here and just make sure I understand that we're asking about red flags when you are being overburdened and maybe passed over for a promotion, or red flags of a workplace in general.
Red flags when it comes to promotions.
When it comes to promotions. Because I agree with what Lauren said about poor instruction. And sadly, I feel like that's getting worse. That's part of, I feel like, is like a leadership crisis right now. Lack of transparency is a major red flag. It's getting really normalized with corporate jargon, but even Deloitte 20 years ago, I talk about this in my book, made a software to detect jargon and showed how many organizations, once they started hitting fraud, the jargon was everywhere, including Enron. And then it wasn't Deloitte. I forget who it was. I think Adam Grant talked about this in one of the book. One of the other signs is when the executive starts making their picture bigger and bigger and bigger on the reports until it gets like full page. And it's always a man. It's always a man. And it's not that women don't do these things. And this is a tension in my work is knowing what the game is, but not pulling up the ladder behind you and not becoming part of the problem. And that if what we're told is the target is toxic, beating toxic, but then not becoming it. And I think that's where we have what we talked about earlier, a lot of women policing the why are you talking to my husband? Well, because he's my coworker. Hello, right? Um, so red flags are love bombing immediately. You can absolutely be love bombed. If all of a sudden everything's fine, too good to be true, nobody's having a real conversation with you. They just had someone step out and you are being put in a promotion. Somebody should be being transparent. I think that's part of the transparency, is showing you the good and the bad.
So wait a minute.
Um,
The love bomb is, oh my God, Victoria, you're so wonderful. We love what you do so much. Would you help close these deals? Is that what you're talking about?
I think that's how it can start. It usually starts very subtly, which is why in my workplace bullying course, I start with white collar bullying because it seems fine. But then once you say yes to that with no boundary set, then the ask gets bigger. And then the ask gets bigger. And there's this guilt that is socialized over women of saying no, of not doing something for other people. You're so selfish.
Mhm.
Um, and then you become so burned out because they did that on purpose. I remember a story I heard from someone of she felt so guilty that her coworker asked her to do this task. It was his responsibility. He asked her, he said she'd be so good at it. And she finally told him, I can't do this. And he goes, and she thought he was going to take it so personally. And he was like, oh, I didn't want to do it either. I just thought you would. Because she thought he was going to take it so personally that he'd invested in her so much, that he saw so much in her. And he was like, no, I just didn't want to do it. Right. So like the love bombing, I mean, or if they start guilting you. I've even had that in interviews because I'm a class researcher. When I try to negotiate salary, I have literally had people tell me, "Oh, well, we're poverty researchers. We don't want to condone greed." It's like asking for 60K in the San Francisco Bay Area is nowhere near greed, babe. Okay?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
there's just those manipulative things that then that's appealing to a gender role. That's appealing um, to normalizing abuse. So, but I agree with all of Lauren. So I'd say transparent. I could keep going, but I'll leave it at that.
But I love it, like listening for the guilt, listening for the love
I
bombs.
was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
You can't out guilt me. Are you
It does
kidding?
work for the Catholic Church, I'll tell you. It does work. All
Right,
right.
but they're never that good. Come on, please. You have to compete with
Love that.
over 2,000 years, honey.
Right? I think we have time for one more question, Victoria.
What are the five highest leverage actions that actually work early in your career?
To then get a promotion,
Yes.
mm, to work on getting promoted. All right. So I'll start. Um, Number one, going in and letting it be known, having the conversation with your boss, not in your first freaking week, but I've seen dudes do it. Okay. In fact, I'm gonna have to quickly tell this story. This was at Outreach. They had a thing for all of the women at Outreach. They flew them in. I was speaking on a panel. There was, let's call it 70 women in the room, four guys who were brave enough to come to the women's group. We're having drinks beforehand, and I went and thanked the guys for coming, right? Like, I want any minority in the room to feel comfortable. And there was a manager and his brand new rep. We're going to call the rep Jared. And he said, what are you talking about? And explained Girls Club and getting promoted. And Jared turns to his manager and says, how do you get promoted around here? And his manager explained how it works, right? Jared had been on the job for 4 days, swear to God. So I go on and speak on the panel, and at the end, we're taking questions, and there's a girl in the back of the room, and she raises her hand kind of meekly, and she's like, well, sorry, I've been the top BDR here for about 3.5 years, and how early is too early to ask to get promoted? And I was like, oh, darling, he's been here 4 days. Right? You've been a top performer for over 3 years, and you thought you were going to be unfairly judged by raising your hand, and that people would think you thought you were fabulous and you were perfect by raising your hand. And all the raise the hand means is, I don't maybe think I'm ready right now, but I'd like a path. So that's big move number one. Make your intentions be known, ask for feedback, and ask for development. Big move number two, get an internal mentor and an external mentor. The internal mentor we call an advocate in Girls Club because they are the person in the room when the decisions are being made. And you want them to know how fabulous you are and have worked with you for a long time so they can give your sound bite because that's how decisions are made. The external mentor is the person who's going to give you the sage advice going forward. So those are my top two. Dr. K, you want to round it out?
I'm going to answer this question a little differently because what I have to focus on in my part of my coaching program, we work on delegating and we work on leverage versus exploitation. And I think one of the first things I have to work on with my clients is that the word leverage already feels so gross to women because you're conditioned to not ask for anything back. And so we have to talk about that work is transactional. And people complain to me that all the time. I just hate how transactional networking feels. It is transactional. You are exchanging your labor for money. That is a transaction. So if it is not transactional, it is exploitative. And so I think that's the first thing to really understand is if you are giving more than you are getting, it is exploitative. Um, I agree with what Lauren said about asking because similar to how men are always shocked when their partners leave them because they thought they were happy, even though they told them 15 times they weren't. Um, they just like they think that their wife loves doing 100% of the housework, family work, and being burnt out at work. And then they will do the same thing at work of thinking that, well, we didn't know that you wanted to move up. And it's like, well,
Hmm.
why? Why would I have a job? Right? So you do have to say it. Um, I also, especially with women who are first generation, who have a low income background, I would also address the belief of that if, like what Victoria shared about feeling like you can't delegate to anyone, that's very common among women from working class backgrounds. And part of that is, especially for a woman of color too, you feel like you can't fail. There's a higher bar you have to meet. You don't have the savings to get you out of it. Something I would encourage you to also consider is that if you never delegate, you are pulling up the ladder behind you. And so that is something also I work on in my coaching program is like, what is healthy delegation? And then what's exploitation? Because also people who've been abused, which we know is mostly women, don't delegate because they don't want to be the abusive boss. And I love that that is a value, but it is also pulling up the ladder to absolutely never delegate. And if you are somewhere where you never see delegation, um,
Another red flag.
that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And so I know that doesn't fully answer the question, but those are why business leaders set core values and then a mission and a vision is because you need to know what your core values are when you're making decisions. Yes, we all know business, the end game is to make money, but it also matters how, or you're not going to make the money. You have to make decisions that are consistent with your brand and what you're doing. And so, similarly, individually, if you have these limiting beliefs, and a lot of them are cultural I also look at the class perspective, but gender is around the world heavily socialized. It's going to be really hard for you to even think about using leverage if it still feels like a dirty word. So maybe you need a leverage badge to put with your bitch badge, is all I'm saying.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I'm liking that. I'm liking that a lot. I love it. Hey, we've got 3 minutes left, and I want to make sure that everybody can get a hold of these fabulous women to continue the conversation. So many good things happening in chat. So thank you for playing along with us. Scan this to make sure that you can follow Victoria and what she's up to. Thank you for bringing us here together today. This was her brainchild, and she's the one who made this happen. Go read Anna's book. This is fascinating stuff, and so many things coming to light that I didn't know about. I felt it maybe sometimes, but you've named it, you've called it out, you've done the studies, you've done the research, and it's really good stuff. And then I got
Thank
to
you.
let you know about what's happening with Girls Club. This is the co-ed. If you're a past Girls Club grad, this is a level 201. These are different courses, different mentors, different leadership topics, and yes, we're letting men in. So come back and play with us. You can be a protege again. You can be a mentor. And that's that. It's the same one. So this is if you want to enroll somebody in your company in that program. Awesome. All right. Let's give the final words all the way around the horn. I'm going to start so Victoria can be our final and just say, thanks for coming, my girls clubbers. This has been a there's more to learn. So keep doing your research and having these conversations and following Anna and Victoria and others. So thank you for having me, Victoria. Wonderful idea.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you.
having me. And just to reiterate what the title of this is, you're not crazy. You know, there's acknowledging the systemic and the history, and that's why you're not crazy. And then I think what we all do here is, okay, what is within your control, right? And so wonderful to meet you on, Victoria. Thanks for bringing everyone together.
Final words.
I'm so glad that we were able to get you two together to have this conversation because frankly, it's if I would have had this many decades ago when I started my career, I think that things might have turned out a little bit different. Um, and so even today with our conversation, I picked up learning about Mark and the interim title. And I've already gone through Girls Club. I've already read Dr. Call-Smith's book and I'm in her school. So we can continue learning. And what I really hope to see is everybody who's on this call grow their career and be able to open doors for other people. Thank you all for your time today. That's it.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you. Lots of love for you in the chat, Victoria. Thanks, and
Oh, thanks.
you're just fabulous. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.